Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Public Opinion with your host, Pam Morton. Public Opinion is the current event discussion and debate show that gives participants the opportunity to discuss and defend their opinion on some of the hottest topics in the news today. So this is how it works. Each participant that I call an opinionator is given 2 minutes to respond to the public opinion question of the week. And then after that, the floor is open for healthy discussion and debate. So let's get started and meet our opinionators for this week. Our first opinionator is April Scott, who is a project manager. And then we have Alfie Walter, who is a diversity and inclusion manager. So ladies, I thank you so much for agreeing to be on my show this week. So let's get started and find out what the public opinion question is for this week. This election has proven that we are living in a nation divided. What, if anything, should the next elected president do to unite this nation? And do you think this is even possible? We're going to start with April Scott. So April, your 2 minutes starts now.
All right. Well, first of all, good evening, and thank you for having me on this panel. I appreciate that, and also good seeing you as well, Alfie. What I think the president needs to do to unite this country, that's a tough task at this moment, just because of the culture that we're in right now with the elections, and we don't know who, at this moment, who the president is going to be. So we are already divided. And you have people that still think like back in the 60s, 40s, 30s. So you have to change the mindset of people. And the only way that those mindsets can change is that their hearts have to be changed. In the Bible, it says, a man thinketh what's in his heart is how he thinks. And so it's going to be very difficult, I think, for the president, who I'm claiming, Biden, to try to bring this nation together. It's going to take more than 4 years, because it took more than 4 years. This country has already been divided, even before now. And with everything that's going on, it has reared its ugly head. So you have to change people's mindset. And I think that with Biden, he might be the one to do it. It's going to start off slow, because first you got to trust in that he is going to be trust to make sure that he's a man of his word, first of all. And he shows compassion, he shows empathy, and he shows that he cares for people. So when someone feels that they're being cared for, or that someone cares about their needs, they're more than likely to get on board with what the person is doing or saying. But it's going to also it starts in a home as well. Children learn how to hate. Children learn how to dislike things from their parents. So whatever their parents are or how they feel is how the child is going to feel. So it has to start in a home, first of all, to change a person's mind. And with this culture that we're in, it seems like the younger people are more together than maybe, say, our generation. We were separated in our generation. In this culture, the millennials and the Generation Zs seem like they're more together culturally. They listen to the same music. They wear the same clothes. They have the same mindset.
Okay. Thank you so much, April. Very good. And now, Alfie. All right, okay. Alfie, your 2 minutes is starting now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pam, for having us on. I am honored to be sharing this time with my soror, April Scott. So again, thank you so much for having us this evening. I thought a lot about your question, and, and more so on the back end, the piece about, is it possible? And so I'll probably lead with that part. I don't know. I believe anything's possible. As April alluded to, I too am a woman of faith, and I know that anything is possible with God. And so I'm believing that, but that is going to be a tall order, to be able to unite this nation. And whomever is chosen to be president, they are going to have to look they are going to have to look to the Most High for strength and direction on how to do that, because the country is so divided, as April said, and it has been always. However, in the last few years, we have seen racism and xenophobia in the mainstream more than I've ever seen in my lifetime, quite honestly. And so, because those things are so prevalent in our society, we are in such a moment of, racial inequality, police brutality, and civil unrest that I believe is going to take a lot. Now, how do they get that done? Well, the next person who will be president will have to get that done by, I think, being the example, speaking truth to power, speaking a message of peace and unity first, and building coalitions of peacefulness, if you will. I believe that's what they're going to have to do, and again, that's going to be a tough job, but it can be done.
All right. All right, that was great. I'm telling you, what a great, you both had very great responses. What I liked about what both of you said was how you included the piece about you have to have faith and God has to be involved. And so I think what you said, Alfie, and what you said also, April, is so true, that we have to start out by just recognizing that we have to put things in God's hands. So now I'm opening up the floor for any further discussion. So what do you think on like the first 30 days of if Biden is elected? What do you think that he needs to do in his first 30 days in order to try to unite this nation?
Well, I'm going to take that question first, if you don't mind. Sure. I think what he needs to do within the first 30 days, he needs to get with the Speaker of the House and the Minority Whip and those leaders that are in the Senate and in Congress, and sit down and tell them what his plan is, what he expects for the nation, what he sees his vision as a nation. And they have to buy into that vision. If you notice right now, there's 47 Democrats in the Senate to 48 Republicans. So that means that's one vote. So either make or break. But he needs to get Congress, those leaders on board first. Talk to them, give them his vision, his plan, and then in turn, put an expectation and an accountability to them, because we have not been holding our leaders accountable. Mm-hmm. We elect them, but we have not been holding their feet to the fire. And I think that whomever is going to be that president needs to do that.
Okay.
You better go ahead and speak it into existence, sister. So, following up on that, I believe that, in fact, Joe Biden is already doing it. I believe that he is already in the midst of speaking a message of unification. And I appreciate that. I said to my husband the other day, I said, what saddens me most about Donald Trump is that as the president of the United States, he is supposed to be the chief protector, promoter of our democracy. And unfortunately, throughout this election season, he's been the biggest detractor. And I just feel as though that's such a selfish position. And he's been the biggest detractor because what he's trying to do is plant these seeds of doubt and dissension around the voting process. And so, but that is consistent with who he is and who he has been in his messaging. And so that it is what it is, as the old folks say. But to answer your question, I believe that, yes, Joe Biden is already, speaking a message saying, listen, I will be a president for these United States, for both Democrats and Republicans. Even if you didn't vote for me, I'm going to work for you. And that's that's the rhetoric, that's the narrative I'm more used to. What's been going on in recent years, every norm known to man associated with the office of president has been broken. And so I really appreciate, Joe Biden's cadence right now. I do.
Right.
And I agree with you on that, because just like earlier today, he came out and he spoke to the American people, and he talked about the concerns that are on the Americans' mind with the coronavirus. He gave us an update. We have not really received an update from the person that's in office now. And that spoke to people. He also said something about the troops, our military, and he addressed that. And we need a leader that is, like I had stated, as compassion. Because, look at Moses. You figure that you can look at Biden as being the Moses of our time.
Mm-hmm.
He had to lead thousands of the Hebrews out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And they were divided.
Mm-hmm.
They, want to do their own thing. They didn't want to listen to him. But by him being the leader that he was, first he went to God about everything before he made a decision. Then he brought that back to the people, and they were able to follow him because he had first seek guidance, wise counsel, and how to lead. And I believe that the person has that faith and that he'll be able to do that. And he was able to bring those people together because he brought them out of bondage. They were able to cross the Red Sea and didn't lose anything. So, you have to kind of look at it that way. So Biden has to be that Moses of our time.
He has to step up and really be a leader. And he has to lead by example. And I think that's the best way that you can lead, is to lead by example. And I think, like you said, Alfie, he's already setting the tone for that in his speech, in his rhetoric right now. He's trying to send a calming message out, because right now we still don't know how people are going to react. And the president that we have now, he incites a lot of negativity. It's a wonder he hasn't been charged with inciting violence, to tell you the truth, because his rhetoric is so toxic. But Alfie, I am curious, as a diversity and inclusion manager.
Sure.
The president already has tried to get rid of the whole diversity teaching in federal
training,
things of that nature. What do you think should be done as far as diversity and inclusion in a lot of the companies and businesses and even schools and things of that nature to unify this country?
So thank you for that question. It's funny talking about the training. So that's a large piece of my job. I develop content and deliver it through trainings, learning, development, and things of that nature. However, the research says that diversity training doesn't work. And that mandatory diversity training doesn't work. That's actually what the research says. Now, I disagree with that to a degree. I think that training per se does not work, because you can't train adults to do anything, right? We are created, and our frontal lobe is developed. I think it's by the time we're 26. My husband's a social worker, so he talks about this. So I don't believe you can train anyone out of their lived experience in their heart. You just cannot do that. But you can expose and share messages that people can embrace. I think that I consider myself to be a lifelong learner. And so I am always looking to learn new things. And I think that there is an opportunity for us all to learn. So that said, so we're going to stick a pin in that. I wanted to make a statement about training. In terms of organizational diversity, commitment to diversity and inclusion, So you see that a lot right now. That is, I mean, everyone is racing to hire VPs of D&I and, you know, the like. I probably get a phone call from a recruiter daily. However, what I think that's nothing new. D&I and organizations and corporations, it really isn't new. It's something that started probably in the late 80s and early 90s, when corporate America was becoming more diverse than it ever had been, particularly in the C-suite. And so diversity management, as it's called, became a thing back then, because corporations were basically saying, hey, you know, we've got all this difference. How do we manage this difference? Because that's really the definition of diversity, the breadth of human difference. And so corporations were looking to understand how to manage diversity. And so diversity has been in organizations as a commitment, as a discipline, as a way that they do business for a few decades now, right? But I think that what we need today is a radical movement of diversity, inclusion, and equity within organizations. You hear all the time, oh, we want to recruit a diverse workforce. Okay, and I believe that I take them at their word when they say that. That's every organization and corporation. That's everybody's message, right? But then to counteract the narrative of being biased towards minority, you'll hear folks say, oh, but we want the best talent. We want diverse talent, but we want the best talent. But here's the thing. The thing is, if you have enjoyed a certain level of privilege for your entire life, you're always going to show up as the best candidate, right? If you've gone to the best schools, if you've grown up in a certain household, if you've had certain exposure to certain things, that creates your lived experience. So you're always going to show up as the best candidate. And quite honestly, minorities are often coming from underrepresented situations. And so they may not always show up as the best candidate in the eyes of mainstream, right? You know, again, let's consider bias and privilege and all those other things. So I would say we need a radical movement within organizations. And I mean radical by saying, by any means necessary, we are going to diversify our workforce. We are going to invest in our underrepresented communities. We are going to embrace minorities in a way that has not been done. And we are going to robustly move them vertically within the organization. And right now that just doesn't happen. There's these very, lackadaisical sort of, oh, we're committed to diversity and inclusion. And that means, we've got one or two executives, we've got some employee resource groups, we volunteered the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, just to try to make a show of what it is. Now, April, what do you think about that? And as far as in the work environment, but maybe even before you get to that, I think for me, I just think that the unity and transforming of this nation needs to begin when kids are like in school or so what is your take on that as far as what should be going on and what should we be doing right now to help with unity?
Well, like I had stated earlier, it starts in a home, but you have homes that are, divided. Mm-hmm. You have parents that are working outside the home. So because the way that the structure is, before you had one parent that was able to work and the other parent stay at home. But when things started changing the economy wise, with the higher prices of things, the cost of living increases, and of course the rate of pay made it difficult for families to have two parents at home. So you have two parents working outside the home. So that means when you come home, you don't have time or you don't feel like teaching your child or talking to your child about whatever because you're tired. So we have to go back to the basics and I'm not I'm not pigeonholing anything, because I do believe in women and men being successful, but I believe that if you are able to stay at home, whether it's the father or the mother, but you got to take time to teach your children.
Yes.
I mean, you got to take the time, because children do not know that they don't like somebody that's a different race until that parent says, hey,
That's
I
true.
don't, you know. And I can give you an example. I never forget being a little girl with my brothers and sisters. We were out somewhere and we saw someone that was handicapped, you know, and we knew that that person was different. And when you see something different, you think it's funny. But at that point, my mother chastised us at that very moment and say, you do not make fun of that person because of their differences, because that could have been you or anybody else. And see, we used to have immediate discipline. You don't have discipline in the schools anymore. They took prayers out of the schools. So we don't have like-minded people, because when you're like-minded, everybody's on one accord. And it says that in the Bible. I can't remember what verse it is, but it has where everyone was on all one accord. There was no chaos or anything. Everybody agreed with everything. And so we have to get back to basics, where people are teaching their kids, you know, not to hate.
I think the basics is right and wrong, you know, and somehow we've lost our way.
Because look at the person now. He thinks everything that is wrong is right, and people are going with that. They interview people. Why are you voting for this person? Well, they're like, well, I know what he's doing is wrong, but you know, my 401k.
And that's that whole self-serving. You are exactly right. Because I found a lot of people asking that same question, like, how is it that people support him in such large numbers? And a lot of people are just very self-seeking, you know, they are only worried about what is going to affect them.
Right. And not as the whole, and not realizing it's as the whole that you're affecting. And so now, but then you still have the people who still think that way. And so now they're having kids, they're instilling that in their kids. So it's like a vicious cycle. How do you break that cycle? Well, you know, just like you have, how do they call it? Sins of the father. At some point, somebody has to say, hey, no more. This is, I draw the line here. I'm not being this way anymore. This is not right. And stand for what is right.
And I think about that. Oh, I'm sorry, Pam. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alfie. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, when you were talking about, you know, people supporting the current president in such large numbers, I posted about this on Facebook the other day. I was shocked. I mean, you could have, you know, as my grandmother used to say, I was literally sitting looking like a penny that needed change. Because because I just knew that this election was going to be a referendum on his behavior. However, so literally on Tuesday night, now we know better, thank the Lord, but, you know, on Tuesday night, I said, really? Is this happening? And for me, it was almost as if the candidates were inconsequential. Because for me, it said, because they represent a way of thinking. We had two very clear choices, right?
Yes.
Sane and insane. No, I'm sorry. That was a shady comment, but a truthful one. However, I said, but what this election showed me was the hearts of men.
Yes.
Because I have been saying that, you know, Donald Trump is representative of a very sort of small, underground, you know, way of thinking, right? This like very small, I thought he represented a very small piece of the population. But to see how much support that he has, I said, folk really buy into what he's selling. And so that is scary to know that so many people align their thinking with him. And that saddened me because I thought, call me, looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, but I was far more hopeful about your average human being, about humanity.
Humanity.
I said, folks they know he crazy. They gonna get,
Right.
You are absolutely right. But I do believe, I think within the Republican Party, there is a divide. There's a thinking of they're going to vote Republican, but I think there's some Republicans who support him just because he's Republican. Yeah. I think there's others who do it because of purely economic reasons. They think that he is the economy. And then I think there's this other group that maybe you're talking about, Alfie, like these almost like a cultish, like a cult. And so I think that they had a whole lot of stuff going on, but their unifier was just the fact that is Republican. And so, and I think that's why the polls were so wrong, because I think there's so many people who were not willing to tell pollsters that they wanted to vote for him.
Right.
They were ashamed. So they were just maybe saying they were going to vote for Biden or whatever. So the polls were all off and all out of whack and everything. But yeah, as we come to this, and if Biden is the president, he is going to have to speak to Congress. He's going to have to speak to Senate. He's going to have to somehow let them know that they have to come together. And you know how they say unity across the aisles.
Yes.
Because like I said before, it has to start at the top.
Yes.
You have to lead by example. So if the people in Congress and the Senate and the president and vice president, if they can all show, we have differences, but we can still kind of work together, get back to some of the things that maybe what we used to try to strive for.
Right.
This last 4 years is kind of been just like an aberration or something. I don't even know, like maybe something out of Twilight Zone or some other zone or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. And not only that,
I don't know.
And not only that, you have to put people in positions that are qualified to do the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And, that makes a difference, because if a person can do the job, then a lot of this chaos, we would not have what we're having right now, because you figure there's people in positions right now that have no clue on what to do or how to handle.
But that was a couple of episodes ago. I had a show about.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Should there be other requirements for becoming president? Right now it's just 35, and so I would say after this, you need a psychological examination,
right?
You need drug testing. You need to know simple civics. You need to know this person even understands how government is run.
Or get rid of the electoral college.
Oh,
How about that?
Oh my goodness.
How about that?
It's been past time for that.
It doesn't serve the purpose anymore.
Past time for all of that.
Yeah, it doesn't serve the purpose.
We are coming to the end of our time. I'm telling you, I have enjoyed you all. Look at you. Now, even though I represent Delta Sigma Theta, you AKAs are trying to represent as well. And I see the AKA back there. And I'm so very proud of Kamala myself. We are all sisters together, but I'm staying very hopeful. For not only this election, but for our nation. I will not give up on this nation. This nation is a wonderful nation.
Yes.
It's been built on the backs of a lot of very strong people. I'm very proud to have this heritage that I have. And I'm not going to stand by and let anybody destroy this country. This country is flawed. It has a lot of problems, but it can be a great country if we all come together and do what we need to do to make it a great country. But
my pastor, Reverend McMickle, he said in a sermon some years ago, he said, America, you say what you want to say about it, but the lines is still longer to come in than it is to go out.
Now that is true. That is
That is so
absolutely
true.
true. So
Yes.
thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciate and I enjoyed this discussion. And we're just going to keep hopeful and we're going to keep hope alive. And we're
Yes.
going to continue to have our faith and we're going to be okay.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I think the consensus from this episode is that we all have to work together to make this country great and to come together and heal the wounds that the last 4 years has created. So until next time, I'll see you later for another episode of Public Opinion with Pam Morton. If you like this show, please push like and subscribe. See you next time because everybody's entitled to their own opinion.